In New Mexico, we often hear that there's a brain drain of young, talented New Mexicans leaving the state for jobs and economic opportunities. Correspondent Gwyneth Dolan looked at the so-called brain drain earlier this year, and this week we revisit her conversation with a group of young professionals. Now, these smart, creative New Mexicans have lived and worked in other places, but they decided to commit to our state.
Nicole Manning and Sophia Sanchez, Manu Sandoval, thank you all three for being with me today.
Of course, of course.
You are all 20 and 30 somethings. This is a time in your life when it's pretty easy to move around. You don't have that much stuff. You can go all over the country wherever you want for work or school or relationships. The three of you have decided to stay, at least for now. And I want to ask you all why. What is so great about New Mexico that you decided not to stay where you have worked and studied and been?
Well, I'd say that the biggest thing is culture. There's a very unique culture here in New Mexico. It's very community-based instead of individualized. I just moved back from the East Coast after 4 years of going to school there, working there, living there. And one of the big things that appealed to me was this focus on the community as a whole. Looking to see what can people do, what can they be a part of, what can they do to help their next door neighbor or their friends or somebody on the street that they don't even know. And that's something that really appealed to me in returning. So, yeah.
You've both, the other two of you have spent time on the coasts working. Did you feel like there's more of a focus on the individual and that New Mexico is more of a community?
Definitely. That's why I came back. Well, I went to DC and I loved it and it was a great experience, but I wanted to come back home. The changes that I wanted to make, I didn't understand why I was in DC, why I needed to come home and make those changes. And I think that Albuquerque is a great place for a young professional to emerge. It's a small community, but it's big. It's big enough to make changes and really get your name out there and be a community leader if that's what you wish to do in any field that you're in. So I think if you're going to make it anywhere, make it here first, and then go if that's what you wish. But I just think that we do have resources and groups that can help you really emerge. So.
I mean, definitely for me, there's a lot of work on the West Coast and visiting the East Coast, not working over there. But it's the people, it's when you go into a convenience store or Smith's on Yale, it's the way that people talk to you, the way that people look at you is just different than anywhere else I've ever been.
Plus, you're going to know someone when you go into the
convenience store. Yeah, definitely, at least one.
So there's the culture that you mentioned. What else is it about New Mexico for you guys that keeps you here?
I'd say that one of the big things is family. This is where I'm from. I don't know about the other panelists. Yeah, so I'm from Rio Rancho, the west side of Albuquerque, and I love my family. I'm very lucky in that my family is extremely supportive, and being with them instead of being a day's plane ride away, that's significant. Mm-hmm. So.
And like I said before, I think that Albuquerque really gives you a chance to build something, and there are lots of things going on. A lot of people that I see that they say there's no opportunity here, there's nothing growing here. That's simply not true. There's a lot of groups for young people, with Albuquerque Community Foundation, the Future Fund, ABQ Involved. There's all these organizations that young people can get involved with and get involved with their community, and that will help you better understand your community. And there's lots of exciting stuff, and there's lots of things happening. So for people to say that, that's why I always ask them, give me one thing you're doing to change the problem you see. Because if you are doing one thing, there's no way that you can say that people aren't doing anything.
I'm thinking about you, Manu, because you're in the music business.
I am indeed.
And
for better or for worse.
And there are just fewer people to collaborate with here, to work with. There's a smaller group of people who go out to see bands play.
Yeah.
They have less money to pay for them.
Yeah.
You told me the other day you are looking for a bartending job.
I am. Yeah, we started up this company about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I
you
just
just
graduated
graduated.
UNM, yeah, in May. And, you know, I'm looking for a job so I can,
But there are no music jobs for you here.
I mean, no, not really. No. That's what we're trying to make is some music jobs. And even less than jobs in some sort of musical sense. Actually, jobs making music are even rarer than you know, any job I've been looked for before. But
You go to LA for work sometimes.
Yeah.
You could move there. You want to be a rock star. You're moving to LA. Why not?
I was planning on moving to LA, and there was a few things like, you know, the cost of living that kept me here. But another big thing was just the talent here. You know, this huge well of untapped musical talent that Albuquerque is something that's hard for me to bypass, you know, to just let go and move somewhere else.
Nicole, you applied to UNM Law School, but you chose to go to the University of Richmond in Virginia. Why did you choose to leave the state for school?
Well, so I was accepted to UNM Law, and I thought I would go there. I'm an alumni for my 2 bachelor's degrees from UNM. But when I sat down with them to have a conversation about how I could afford it and what the finances would be and what was going on with UNM Law, I was disappointed. They had somebody coming from the East Coast to take over as dean at the time, somebody who's no longer here, even though they had a wonderful interim dean, Barbara. And I just thought that they were focusing on something other than New Mexico. So I had applied to Richmond Law, and they offered me a massive scholarship, which I was grateful for, and it made it par with UNM Law. So then the consideration was, what am I going to get from there that I wouldn't necessarily get here, and why would I want it? One of the big things was about bringing new information back and having a different education than other attorneys in the state. Is there something that sort of education could bring me? Richmond was a city like Albuquerque that had an appeals court in it, that had a federal district court in it. 2 hours south of DC, you know, to the west there was mountains, to the east there was the beach, which I did not make it to in the 4 years I was there. But it had similar opportunities as Albuquerque. They were just invested in me, which I think had a unique twist to it. So I did decide to go out to Richmond and kind of reboot and say what, you know, really focus on law. And I had planned originally to come back. Halfway through law school, I thought I was going to be staying. I even took the bar in Virginia. I'm a licensed attorney there. And
But you have made a sacrifice in moving back.
yeah, I'm actually going to be taking the bar in 5 days
You
here.
have to do that again.
I have to do it again, yes.
I mean, obviously, if you had stayed on the East Coast, there would be so many more jobs and you'd make more money.
Money is one thing. I mean, cost of living is comparable. Richmond to Albuquerque, even Norfolk or parts of Northern Virginia, Nova, all those are comparable when you do the cost of living for it. Housing is expensive. In DC, as you talked about, eating, I think Sophia said she ate soup quite a bit when you lived in DC, and that's not an unknown thing. So I you know, as far as finding a job here that was comparable for an attorney, it was easily done. In fact, when I was considering staying, I mentioned it to a friend. He called me an hour later and said, please send your resume to this person. So I got a position as a law clerk at a very supportive firm who are happy to help me on my way as I study for the bar here in Albuquerque.
Are those connections part of what keeps you here?
Yeah, that's what I was just, you know, thinking when you were speaking, is imagine what you can do as a lawyer or what you can do in music or what I can do in community engagement here in Albuquerque, right? You can really make it big here. There are people that want to support you. There are people who are, you know, putting money into it. It may not come from the government right now. It may not come from who we want it to come from, but I think that there's a community here that really cares about seeing the success of other people. So
They care
I
about
see that.
you
yeah.
personally,
I
and
see
that
that.
matters.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's universal in the community here. We, you know, talking about it, like Manu said, You go to the grocery store, it doesn't matter if you know somebody there or not. You're going to have a conversation with somebody in the line. And that wasn't something I had on the East Coast, like meeting new people or joking with them or just having that back and forth. I had individuals who gave me career advice in the grocery store line, and it was good advice here in Albuquerque.
Want to help you.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that people being born and raised here, it's healthy to want to go. It's healthy to want to experience things and, you know, work somewhere else. That's great. But what the conversation is surrounded now, like the narrative is all the negative. So it's just about changing that narrative and what is going on here.
But you can't just change the narrative. The crime is real.
Yes.
And Manu, you use a lot of really expensive recording equipment.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the address of our studio online anywhere, you know. We're going through, actually in this very notebook that I'm using here today, we have a list of all these artists that have messaged us and we're going through, and we're meeting them at coffee shops initially, you know, because we've had 4 break-ins at where we live now, not in our house, but, you know, cars and stuff outside. And it's, you know, it's just...
It's
you have to be
exhausting.
yeah, that's a very good word for it, exhausting, yeah. And disappointing and disheartening.
So, and that comes from our electeds, that we need to
Yeah.
kind of get on them as young people and really hound them on changing things like crime and substance abuse facilities and education. I think those 3 things are the biggest things that we need to fix to keep people here, right? And honestly, I think, of course, we need job growth. Everybody needs it, but those 3 things I think would keep people here if we change those.
What about fun stuff? I mean, you know, when you go to LA, right? You're like, whoa, there's a lot to do here, you know? And in Washington, there's just so much stuff. There's so much more. And, you know, I was in Colorado last weekend. It's amazing bike paths and summer trails, all this fun stuff to do. There's not as much infrastructure for fun stuff here. And there's not as many shows, there's not as many museums, not as much of that stuff. Is that something you think about when you think about leaving? Or is it something that you wish there was more of here?
No, I find that there's a ton of stuff. I went to Zoo Music the other night. It was reggae. I went with my family, had a 10-year-old cousin and like an 80-year-old family member there. Everybody loved it. There were thousands of people there. And everybody was happy. They didn't have many incidents. People took advantage of it. And so I think that, you know, that's just like for instance of what they do. They do a ton of movies in the parks up on the west side. You have a new park that's up there for, you know, a park for everyone, which is fantastic and gets a lot of use. I played kickball here for 6 years before I left, and I plan on getting back involved in it again. And as far as the nightlife, well, Manu, I think you would know more about that now than I do. I'm studying for the bar.
I mean, yeah, there's plenty to do. I think part of the issue is marketing. You know, a lot of people aren't letting the city know what's going on a scale that, you know, everyone can see it, you know. For example, with the Zoo Music. I mean, I know that is something that goes on. When was that the one that you went to?
I think it was like a week and a half ago.
Well, part of it was, you know, it used to be when I was your age that the back of the paper had all the stuff that was happening that week and everybody read it and everybody went to the stuff, and now it's much more fragmented and you kind of have to see it somewhere, but everybody's not looking at the same stuff. Nicole, you told me that part of the reason you came back was because you feel like New Mexico needs you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm an attorney. There's a lot that goes into that. There are ethical considerations for how we treat the individuals who are around us. There are considerations in regards to crime, 23% increase in the past 4 years for property crime, 47% for car theft. And thank you to Raul Torres for those random numbers. He's educating quite a bit on those. But I think that when I see something like that, I want to change it because I love Albuquerque. 4 years, I never once called myself a Virginian or anything but a New Mexican. And that was one of those moments that I had when I came back, and I was like, oh, I'm home.
Manu, do you feel like New Mexico needs you?
I mean, I feel like New Mexico needs someone who's doing the things that I'm trying to do. I don't know if it necessarily needs me in particular, but I think, you know, what I'm trying to do and what we're trying to do as Maple Street Records is instill a sense of pride for the city itself, you know, so people who live in Albuquerque don't want to steal another Albuquerque citizen's car, or they don't want to break into another Albuquerque citizen's house because that person's from my city. Like, why would I cause them any kind of harm? And the way that I try to do that, you know, just my skill set is music, and, you know, having something musically come out of here that is reaching a lot of people, so people here have something a little more to be proud of, you know, something that they can think about and maybe not want to hurt other Albuquerque citizens.
Sophia, we have about 30 seconds left.
I think I agree with you. I think it's about making Albuquerque residents proud to be from here, and I think they are. I think it's just giving them something to be proud about, right? Like, you know, it's great to see you guys here doing what you're doing, and makes me happy that that's going on. So, and that's why I'm here, is to change that and really engage the community and all these good things going on. So.
Wonderful things like this, talking to people, you know, like us who are trying to stay around.
Which I'm grateful for. Thank you three for being with us today.
Thank you.